People who steal cables or vandalize infrastructure and disrupt the provision of essential services such as transport and electricity will now face longer periods in jail. As from tomorrow, the Criminal Matters Amendment Act comes into effect. It means cable theft will no longer be seen as petty theft. President Jacob Zuma signed the act into law in December last year. Now, for more on the story, we are joined in studio by Dr Mathole Motshekga, the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Justice and Correctional Services in Parliament. Thank you very much for joining us, Chairperson.
Thank you, madam.
Now, how will this act be different from the previous legislation that we had?
The act seeks to strengthen the criminal justice system in relation to, cable and metal theft, because as you correctly said, in the past this was regarded as petty crimes and dealt with under the common law. Now this time a new offense has been created which criminalizes the tampering with this basic essential infrastructure, destroying or damaging the infrastructure, and also the bail conditions have been tightened, and the sentences, there's a provision for minimum sentences. So we think that this will be more effective, because here you are dealing with social and economic disruptions, and you cannot have a society that is not certain about the provision of basic services because of random disruptions. You also have a situation where you have service delivery protests which lead to malicious damage to property, even properties which have nothing to do with the grievances that lead to this protest. So we think that government has really done a good job, and our people will feel secure, their property will feel secure, they'll be guaranteed of regular supply of the basic services.
And I'm glad you mentioned the transition from common law to criminal law. Now, let's look at the cost of cable theft. Did that play a big role in this? Yes, you mentioned, the socio-economic challenges that it creates in terms of people not being assured that they will have the basic services because of these crimes. But what about the large costs that government incurs because of cable theft? Did that play a big role in the act?
A big role. In fact, the act stemmed from the Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Committee, and the reports that reached them, from organizations like PRASA, ESCOM, Telcom, runs into billions. So it is something that even the economy would not afford. So it was essential that the matter be dealt with.
Will this legislation serve as a deterrent against cable theft? Do you think it's going to work?
It is definitely going to work. We believe that the stiff sentences that will be imposed, the limitations on bail will ensure that people get scared, because at the moment it's free for all, because they think you can arrest them, the following day they will be out because this is a petty crime. But this, as other commentators put it, this amounts to economic sabotage. And in other countries, economic sabotage would carry a life sentence, because it's really an attack on the nation.
Understandably so. Now, you mentioned these stiff sentences and limitations. Let's unpack them. I understand for first-time offences, I think they get 3 years. Let's look at them briefly.
The offences can run up to 30 years imprisonment, depending on what has been done. But you see, the offence now also extends to people who collude with the thieves, but also mere possession of these cables would lead to convictions.
When you say possession, are you talking about the second scrap metal agent? So the guys in between, if I'm, if a person who steals the cable sells it to me and I'm selling it to somebody else, are we all part of the crime?
Exactly. For instance, if you look at the city of Pretoria, there was almost a civil war where, drug addicts would come and remove cables from buildings. Obviously, some would use that to produce nyaope, but others would go and sell to the scrap yards. So you have to deal with that whole chain.
Now, let's look at those who have already been arrested before this act came into law. It's coming into effect tomorrow. So what happens to them? Does it affect them in any way, or will they just serve the sentences that they're already serving and that's it for them?
You see, when you make a law, you have to decide whether it's going to be retrospective or not.
Yes.
And usually a well-established principle of law is that you don't make a law retrospective, because by the time you arrest people, people must know what the law is, what the penalty is. That is what we call a principle of legality.
All right, thank you for that law lesson. Now, let's look at damage to state infrastructure. You mentioned this briefly when you were speaking about economic sabotage. And, we've been seeing incidents of that recently, for example, with some of the protests across the country. Take us through what the Act says exactly about state infrastructure, if it does say anything about it at all.
You see, Eskom, Telkom, Prasa, those assets are
state-owned
assets. Now, the state requires that infrastructure to deliver basic services to the nation. So this infrastructure is an essential infrastructure. So any tampering or interference with it, any damage or destruction of that infrastructure is really an assault on the nation itself, and therefore has the law empowers the courts to deal with that very strictly.
Perhaps to wrap up would be to look at whether society is aware of this law. How is the committee going to go about it? Obviously, it's going to be in the government gazette and in media like you are now, but what else is the committee going to do to ensure that people are aware of this law?
Parliament has constituency offices all over, and we think that now is the time that parliamentary constituency offices must educate society about this. And the good thing is that if society has already been feeling a pinch about this thing. So media, community radio stations, yourselves, we all have to put our energies together to make sure that we communicate the importance of this legislation. And also we need the people themselves to be the eyes and ears of the police and work with the police and be whistleblowers. Speaking
of whistleblowers, will they be protected? Because that's always a concern for anyone who wants to report a crime.
People are protected, but if there's a feeling that that protection is not enough, Parliament is open. Is there Parliament? They must indicate, and we will make the necessary laws or tighten the existing laws.
Perhaps an interesting question would be, in terms of whistleblowers in general, have you found that society is open to reporting crimes, or are we still afraid? Or do we just look away and act like we don't see what's going on?
There are lots of pressures in society. Yeah. Sometimes people are concerned with their issues, they want to survive and things like that, that even those that are public-spirited, you may find that they don't whistleblow, but I think that enough awareness exists that people should be whistleblowers, because they are actually protecting themselves, their neighbors, their children.
The country.
The country as a whole, yes.
Thank you very much for joining us, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Matu, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Okay.
That was the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Correctional Services and Justice in Parliament, Dr Mathole Motshekga.